everyone. My name is Miguel Fierro from Microsoft, and today I'm going to talk about AZTK, which is a new library that we published in GitHub. It's open source, and it is able to manage Azure Spark clusters on Azure. It is able to deploy the clusters, monitor clusters, and delete it, and do all the process to create end-to-end pipelines within Spark. The main feature is that this Spark lives on a Docker container. This is a little bit different to what we have before in another technology called HDI inside. That was a Spark that lived on top of Hadoop. This idea is to have Spark in Docker containers, and it has some advantages, like the Docker container allows to modularize the system and have different libraries and different frameworks that you could add to your cluster, in a sense that it can be completely managed automatically. Unfortunately, in Microsoft, we are not good with naming. So AZTK stands for Azure Distributed Data Engineering Toolkit, which is like a little bit general. But well, the idea is, as I said, that it allows to manage Spark clusters in Docker containers. Some of the features that this library has is that it allows mixed mode clusters, low priority and dedicated VMs. So then also you can bring your own image, Docker image. Normally, what people do is you can either download one of the images by Microsoft, or you can upload your own image. You can post it in Docker Hub, and then you can pull the image from Docker Hub. Something interesting that is kind of new is that it allows Docker Spark images with in GPU clusters. So at the end, this lives on a virtual machine, and this virtual machine can access to the GPU. Recently, in deep learning is going very strongly. So to use Spark with GPU is something that many people will like. And we can talk later a little bit on some of the advantages and disadvantages of using Spark with GPU. And finally, you can use this CLI with different languages. Obviously, in our conference, we are very interested in R, but also other like Python or Java or Scala. I would like to ask for your forgiveness, but I'm going to show some code, just so you get a very good understanding of how easy it is to deploy these clusters with CLI AZTK. To create a cluster, the only thing you need to know is to do AZTK Spark cluster create, and then you define the VM that you want to use and the site. And you can, as I said before, you can use the low priority mode, and you'll get a discount. You have tools for listing the clusters and to get the details. If you get details, you get something like I'll show you. Obviously, when you're working with pipelines and with customers, is very, very important to have a good monitoring tool. Now, to submit a job is very easy. The only thing you need to know is you need to have your script. You just do AZTK Spark cluster submit with the ID of the name of your cluster and your script, and then you can add your arguments at the end. This is also good because if you want to, many customers that we have, they deploy their systems programmatically. They have some continuous integration, continuous development systems that allows them to create pipelines in an automatic fashion. You can also compute files that are hosted in a blob, and this wasbs is just the URL of an Azure blob. And you can monitor your job through an SSH tunnel. This will show in a Spark UI. And also you get the logs of your script, and you can take a look at that. Obviously, the problem with this is that you don't get real-time debugging, and I found that this can be tricky. So an alternative to this is to connect directly to RSTUDIO, which is what many people do. This is the Spark UI. If you're familiar with Spark, it is very important to have some kind of UI, and this will list all the details of the cluster, all the nodes, and the jobs that are running at the same time. The key part here is to define your Docker image. To the left, you'll see how the structure of the Docker image can be defined. There are, if you go to the repo, you'll see that there are many example Docker images and base Docker images, so you can start constructing on top of this. Some are from Anaconda and Miniconda for Python. Also, there are others for GPU, and also you have for R. And here again, depending on the Spark version that you want to use, you have the base version, which is basically the CPU version, and the GPU version. And the typical Docker file can be seen there. Initially, it's based on another Docker file that so it's like basic GPU information that you need, for example, and this is just downloading a Docker image from Docker Hub, and then below you have to define all your dependencies, and in this case are Linux dependencies, and you need to define some details for our language that are defined below. And in the case that you want to work with GPU cluster, what you have to do is AZTK Spark cluster create, and you just need to define the kind of a VM that has GPU by default. So in Azure, the GPU VMs are the N series, and then to submit an application, it is exactly the same as you did before. It's AZTK Spark cluster submit. When you're working with Spark on GPU, there's slight difference if you are working with GPU directly from R. And the thing is, you have your code goes to a Spark instance that is on top of a JVM, and then from the JVM it goes down to the code on GPU. So there is a lot of controversy about whether it makes sense to use Spark with GPU, and many people are against, because they think there are a lot of inefficiency, but some other people think that it is a good idea because many algorithms, especially the deep learning algorithms, can give you a higher accuracy in some cases. And something important is to be able to use this tool with RSTUDIO. At the end, if you want to deploy your system in a programmatic way, you can, it is interesting to use the CLI. But many times, especially when you are developing and debugging, it is more powerful to use RSTUDIO. So using AZTK, you can also connect to RSTUDIO. And for that, you just initialize the Spark cluster. Specifically, when you initialize with --r, you get all the low-level support for the R language, and you could do the same for Python or Scala or Java. And here, the only difference is you need to initialize a YAML file where you can add a custom script. In this case, the custom script is the RSTUDIO server installation that comes with a SH file. And then when you create the cluster, it will start, so what will happen is that it will start the VM, it will download the Docker image, it will install RSTUDIO and all the services associated with the system. And in order to connect to RSTUDIO, you can SSH on it using just AZTK Spark cluster SSH. And this is how it looks. Just for one example, if you want to use SPARKLYR, it is quite simple. You just call the library, and then you define the URL. It is spark // with the host name and the port. And then you can directly connect, doing Spark Connect. You would connect to the cluster, and from that point you can start developing. So that's it. The basic idea is that AZTK is a CLI system that allows you to programmatically create clusters on demand. And it is a very recent system, and we are always open to contributions. Thank you very much.